Hey, Remax Associates, Matt Barton here, your principal broker, the broker minute or two. Hey, what I wanted to cover today was the new seller's property condition disclosures that came out the end of May. If you haven't been paying attention, yep, we went from 6 pages to 16 pages. And I've heard some grumbling about how much larger it is. And maybe that has something to do with almost every year, the number one or number two item litigated nationally is seller's disclosures or seller's disclosure related items. So maybe that's why it's taking a little bit of a top billing there. But nonetheless, we have a new form. I've been asked several times by agents, well, what do I do? You know, I had a listing, I'm taking a listing, or I had a buyer, or I'm receiving seller's property condition disclosures. Let me see if I can make this clear. So if you have a transaction, or let's say you have a listing that was signed before June 1st. Our company policy is you can continue to use the old form because it was filled out prior to this really getting out into circulation. But if you're taking a listing later on, especially today forward, the expectation is that you'll use this new form. Likewise, with a buyer, if you're receiving documents from another party today and they're using the old form, pretty simple phone call. Hey, my brokerage and yours should as well require that we have the updated form so that we have the protection of using the approved form. All right, so there's that item. I wanted to go through a couple of things that did change in this disclosure form. Point out these at the front end because I get this question all the time. I had one today, my seller is actually the executor of a will and, never lived in the property. Do we still need to provide seller's disclosures? I think this highlighted section really says it all, regardless of occupancy. So we have people who are investors, we have builders. It does not remove the obligation for disclosure. If there's nothing to disclose, then most of the answers will be no. And there's also a portion to say what time frame they did or did not occupy the property. So they're covered that way. So hopefully that wipes out a lot of these questions that we get pretty regularly. Does my seller need to provide seller's disclosures? The short answer, yes. And it's really for their benefit. Okay, so to the form, not everything has changed. There's a lot more information. The first one you may notice is that in regards to additions and remodels, it says the following: to your knowledge, did any former owners, not just the current one, former owners make any additions, structural changes, or alterations to the property? Can I point out the obvious here? We live in an area where maybe 15, maybe 20% of people get permits on basement build outs. So we're going to have this one. If you want to protect your seller, probably want to answer that in the affirmative, if they're aware of a basement being built out and what the status of that was and were there permits issued, et cetera, et cetera. It's something that we've neglected for a good long time, and the buyers have suffered to some degree by not having this disclosed up front. Okay. And it goes on to ask if it was an investment property, if any of the tenants made changes. So that's the first one as far as changes, modifications to the property. Second one is in regards to culinary water. Lots of issues on this one in the past, especially in regards to water rights, water shares. Who's the water authority? Do you have the documents? Are they owned? Is it a well? Was the well approved by the state engineer? So this goes into much more detail so that a buyer can be aware. All right. Making our way down, everybody's favorite topic, septic systems. They are a big problem. Quite often things are not disclosed well, so it's a much more exhaustive covering of that particular portion of the property. That has changed. Okay, I think there's two more that I was pointing out here. Maybe, oh, here we go. Other moisture conditions. So, up above we talked about the standard things, but then there's this other moisture in reference to the basement and or crawl space. Are you aware of any past present water leakage, accumulation, or dampness? And has there been any flooding, lot drainage, moisture seepage? Again, it's much more exhaustive because in the past sellers were dodging it because it didn't specifically call things out. So they've now used more encompassing language. All right, and then the last one, HOA, more information about the HOA and how to get in contact, and if there's lawsuits, litigations. Is it part of a PID? That's always a good one. And then the last one, down at the very bottom, is this additional disclosures. And it, as you can see, is tons of empty space and basically puts the responsibility for the seller to disclose any additional items, right? Because we always operate under this premise, well, if it's not covered in the seller's disclosures, then we don't have to disclose it. That is not accurate. The seller's disclosures are just to help facilitate the seller's legal responsibility to disclose. So hopefully that's helpful. Hopefully you understand now which document will be required in which time frame. If not, feel free to reach out and give me a call. Thanks.